Lynn Patterson Gorancel. I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana. My story is about legal abuse in the family court system. It started about 12 years ago. My daughter is now 17. My son is 22. But I have not actually had a relationship with him since he was 14. The problem started when my husband remarried, and my children, well, my daughter specifically, started coming home and having these complaints about the stepmother. And I just kept telling her, well, you know, just go. She didn't want to go to her father's house and things like that, which was, you know, I couldn't understand why she was so dramatic about, or so emotional about not wanting to visit with her father. And she would tell me that there's just something wrong with the stepmother. She's just some unusual things. And in the meantime, I would also notice things like the stepmother coming to my home when I was working, picking up my children without my knowledge. It got to the point where the stepmother was going to the school, and it got to the point where things started escalating to the point where Aubrey refused to go to school, absolutely refused to go to school because she did not want to be near the stepmother. So because she stopped going to school, I couldn't make her go to school, so they started telling me it was my fault, I was a bad mother, so they were taking me to court, again, constantly for sole custody, trying to get me psychologically evaluating, saying that I had all these mental disorders, that I was crazy, I was paranoid, I was schizophrenic, which I am none of those. They ordered every single medical record that I have had for the last 10 years. And I did go to counseling because we were struggling, there were problems emotionally. I sought help for that. I didn't get much paperwork from them because they never actually went to counseling much or did anything like that. But getting back to Aubrey and her school problem at the time, she had actually gone to her school counselor complaining of the problem that she was having with the stepmother at her father's house. And that's when she was starting to get sick with the panic attacks, irregular heartbeats. Again, I was blamed for that, even though it's documented in medical records. She was given some medication for that. She was struggling in school. You know, some of the teachers said that she couldn't concentrate. Although she did not start out being that kind of student, she was the type of student that always wanted to be the best student. She had always talked about going to Harvard, but there was a decline in her schoolwork. And when we would try to talk to the judges or the psychologists or anybody, nobody could understand. And I kept telling people, the stepmother, I feel the stepmother is trying to take my children away from me for whatever reason. She's just feels very entitled, like I should cater to her. And I didn't know, I couldn't understand what that was. I had never been involved. I was a visual artist. This was totally just such a new territory for me. So I think things really came down when things really hit the fan, and I realized something was really wrong, was when they filed for sole custody again the very day my mother died, which was one day before my birthday. It was October 30th. and that's in the court records. It was filed, and that's the same date as my mother's death certificate, saying that my daughter was in grave danger. I don't know, but I couldn't think. I didn't have enough money for an attorney, so I had to try to represent myself to keep my daughter. And I did pretty good the first time. I'm kind of losing my train of thought right now.
Okay, you represented yourself in court.
Yeah, and I did pretty good. That was before Christmas. That was around Christmas. And that's when Ann Latour came in. We were appointed, my daughter was appointed, and my son, they were appointed their own attorney, an advocate attorney, which I thought was going to be good, so the children could have a voice. Well, that was not the case. I overheard a conversation when I brought my daughter in to have her first appointment with Miss Latour. And I could hear the door, the walls were thin, and I was sitting in a chair that was near the door, and I could hear Ann Latour being very rough, speaking very roughly towards my daughter. And Aubrey was in tears. She was very young. She was overwhelmed. And I couldn't believe the way that I heard this woman talking to my daughter. So it was very hard for Aubrey to respond to her and to express how she really felt about the situation that she was in. And I could hear my daughter kind of whimper. So my daughter was, they said that she was like overly sensitive, or she was so pathetic and weak and meek, and that it was probably because I was not a good mother again. My brother-in-law comes down with cancer. We lost my mother, my father, and my brother-in-law of 18 years within 1 year of each other. So around the time that my brother-in-law died, which was in November of 2008, I believe, they went for sole custody again. It's like every time they saw a weak spot, that's when they would try to come in and, you know, kick me in that weak spot. At one point, I tried to move to, I had gotten married to Chris, and we tried to move to Corpus Christi because that's where he was stationed at the time. And they just totally refused to let us leave the state. I thought it would be healthy for my daughter to be away from the situation. But instead, we lived under a microscope. Our every move was monitored, every move. It's almost like Aubrey would say, Aubrey felt that she was being spied on, even at the school, because the stepmother would have her friends checking up on Aubrey. Anything that she did, it seemed to get back to the stepmother and the father. And then the stepmother, when Aubrey refused to go to see her father, she'd find the stepmother like driving in front of her house, showing up at the school bus stop, and nobody believed us what the problem was. And there was also some domestic violence. The father had burst into the my home one time, and body slammed me on the floor, breaking my little finger here. But of course that never went anywhere because he alleged that I broke my own finger, of course. So even with the domestic violence, history, there was never much that was done, and I kept asking for psychological evaluations on the stepmother to make sure that she was fit to be in the same home with my daughter. And I asked for this in legal papers 3 times, and I was always denied, and I was just told that I was paranoid. I was put in jail for 2 days at one court appearance because I couldn't take it anymore. I was a witness to the suffering of my children, and I had to stand up and say something. It may have been legal, the things that they were doing, but it doesn't make it right. When you see your children suffering, you cannot rationalize that or justify that as it's okay because it's legal. And I told the judge that. I told him in a room full of lawyers that this was harassment and it needed to stop. And he says, well, if you don't be quiet, you're going to be under the jail before midnight. And I said, well, let me tell you, jail would be a vacation compared to the last 10 years of my life. And I said, let's go. So we went. And the one thing that I didn't know is that they were going to take my daughter away from me the next day. So that's how and I was supposed to have temporary, they were supposed to be temporary custody. I was supposed to be able to go back to court in a couple of weeks to get my daughter. I had to go through another psychological evaluation. I was denied all contact with her until the court said it was okay. Took me a long time to get back to court because the judge who had just informed me that my ex-husband had every right to take me to court anytime he felt like it, he was now telling me and my lawyer that we could not go back to court for temporary custody to gain custody back of my daughter. He was like, let's things settle down now. I'm not ready to go back to court. But actually, I had every right to go to court again. But he was saying that he wasn't going to hear it, or he didn't want to hear the matter. So there's your answer right there. Even if I went to court, you know, he'd already given me his answer. Now, I'll come up to date as where we are now. I had not seen my daughter in 3 years. It was so difficult, and I think, Aubrey, you can attest to the fact possibly that you know, they encouraged you not to visit with me and things of that nature. But it got to the point where she actually in February ran away. We had moved back to Lafayette, and she ran away from her father's home because he had shoved her up against a wall, and she felt that his anger was so, he was in so much rage that she was in fear for her life. These were one of the things that we tried to talk to the psychologist, her lawyer, my lawyer. These were some of the things that they would not listen to. So she came to my house, and she has not seen her father since then, since February. And we went back to court when I tried to get some legal custody, or because I had nothing. I didn't have custody at that time or anything. So I could make decisions for her as far as school and medical stuff. He did not give me custody, and he said he wasn't going to pursue anything on the issue of him, the father, pushing her against the wall, because he felt that did not rise to the level of domestic violence. which I think if a man shoves a 16-year-old girl up against the wall and she feels threatened for her life, that is domestic violence. So,
I'd like to know what it's a he.
Judge Blanchette? Yes, it's a man.
Would you like to know what he does to his children and wife?
Yeah.
I guess he gets away with all kinds of stuff. It's not.
Yeah, he must, huh? But I found out that I'm not the only person that has a problem with this judge. In fact, on topics you'll see is where someone has set up a forum. Should Judge David Blanchette be removed from court? There are countless complaints, but I really had to step out of my comfort zone. Really had to step out of my comfort zone because I didn't know anything about the legal business. I didn't know what was going on, but when I decided that it was wrong, I just started doing research, and that's when I came across the reforming the family court system to protect children in high conflict custody cases. I don't even think the people involved in my case even knew what a high conflict case was, because I'm the one who had to bring it up. That's anything that goes on for many years. I would say maybe anything that lasts over 3 years, 4 years, possibly you're looking at a high conflict custody case. I discovered that there were several types of personalities that are people with personality disorders that you will find in these specific high conflict cases. I became a court advocate to help other women in the same position, or even men. And I've seen a lot of really sad situations where, especially the women that are pro se, or even the men that are pro se, they are taken advantage of by the court system. Or the knowledge that you don't have, they will play upon your ignorance. And in fact, one lady that I was working with was pro se. She was helping herself, and she was up against 2 other parties, lawyers, and she was fighting for visitation for her son. And when the hearing officer, Rebecca Kirk, called everybody in for the conference, she wanted just the lawyers. So when I tried to walk in with my client, she said, "No, y'all can't come in, it's just the lawyers." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, my client is pro se, so she's her own lawyer. So no, she gets to come in. You have to let us in." And so finally they said, okay. But don't think I didn't have to pay for that later. Yeah, they have their ways. Because I also had my own case going on at the same time. But I've had several of my attorneys say, I've gone through about 5 or 6 attorneys. I've had several of them say, well, if I appeal the judge's decision, I'm going to get him mad. He's going to be so mad at me. Oh, well, you know, they don't like it when you start going through the Third Circuit, or I'm not sure, I can't even remember the exact words, but they made it clear that that was something they were not going to do, was appeal the case, even though they knew that the judge was wrong or the judge was biased. Even the psychologist, Ken Bouillon, asked me, "Do you think that David Blanchette is biased? And I said, absolutely. He's known for being biased towards men, giving custody to men. And it was so funny to me that out of all the people in my case, I think there was only one lawyer out of all the people in my case who were actually a mother or had been divorced or had gone through a divorce. You know, all these people, they come home, you tell them their story, you're struggling, but at night they go home to their comfortable little lives. And it's like they treat people, the arrogance that is appalling. The arrogance that I have witnessed from the judges, from the hearing officers, is appalling. What I hear constantly, this is my courtroom. This is my courtroom. Where do they come off saying that? Where do they get that in their mind? The power, they are so filled up on their own power, it's unhealthy. They don't seem to be very healthy people, in my opinion. And it's scary to think that these people are judging the lives or in control of the lives of my children. I feel very bad for anybody going into the family court system. They automatically treat you like a criminal. And one thing that the judge will say often, especially Judge Blanchette, well, you married him, and now you want to make him my problem? Well, first of all, I think he signed up for that job. First of all, he gets paid for that. That is his job. And when you marry somebody, you know, you don't have a crystal ball to know how it's going to turn out. I mean, that's just life. That's the way it is. But we don't go into family court. I mean, divorce is hard enough, but then to be also feel like you're abused by the people who are supposed to be working on your case and are supposed to be fair, I don't get it. It's just common sense. I mean, if you don't like your job, then don't do it. But don't blame the person that's there, you know, to get a decision from the court or a fair decision. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, I hear what you're saying.
I don't know.
Do you want to talk about Dr. Karen Huffer and legal abuse syndrome?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit.
Tell me about it. Because I was unable to interview her. I hoped at the end of the trip.
Okay. During all of this, I ran across, first of all, when I was starting out to do investigating as to what was going on or try to find some answers, I just typed in legal abuse. And the first thing that popped up I found was just a one-page little article on Dr. Karen Huffer. And I said, I printed out the website and everything, and I said, this might be something good. I might need to look into this. So after some time, I contacted her and found out a little bit more about it, and I took her course. And I can tell you that the legal abuse syndrome or post-traumatic stress disorder from litigation is very, very real. I have witnessed it myself. I got to the point where I could not check the mailbox. I became totally paralyzed. I could not move. Just the thought of trying to check the mail, because I always thought I was going to get legal papers. I'd wake up with nightmares out of the clear blue, my heart just pounding out of my chest. And finally, I went to the doctor, and that's when I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And after I got certified and started helping other people, I really realized how your testimony can be impaired when you have any kind of stress. Especially when you have to face your perpetrator in the same courtroom who's sitting next to you. You know, just even certain little movements that they make, you can tell that'll just can set you off or send fear because you don't feel protected. And then if you don't think fast enough, or you know, you stumble over your words, then the other lawyer comes in, the opposing counsel comes in and tries to slam you, and they can lie and belittle you and all of this, and that just creates a deeper scar. So I have seen in my clients just be really unable to testify due to fear, anxiety. So how can you get a clear and a fair trial like that without proper accommodations? And many of my accommodations were denied. So, I mean, I don't know.